Autel app. I've already turned the drone on, which is necessary for it to connect, and I've turned the controller on. Once we see that the start button there is blue and the connected screen is green, we know that we can go ahead and enter the app, and we'll go ahead and get a first-person view through the camera. A couple things to note while we're at this screen is it gives you the percentage of life in the controller, the percentage of life on the drone. So the controller's at 83%, the drone's at 99%. Gives you even a little indicator of the winds. Of course, any of this weather data you should not trust entirely on the app for. You should get, of course, some sort of weather brief before you fly. If you're flying this drone commercially, then of course you're going to want to get an official weather brief, probably at weatherbrief.com, 1-800-weatherbrief.com. You'll see, according to the screen, the winds are out of the south-southwest at 3.4 miles, 78.9 degrees here in Florida, and no rain. So let's go ahead and enter the app. So when we go ahead and we connect to the drone, one of the first things that happens is it gives us an overall status update, kind of like a pre-flight check. Lets me know that there's not an SD card in. I have the SD card out. I had some pictures on it that I'm going to go ahead and edit and do some things with. Lets you know that everything's good. You really want to mainly check the radio strength, and we are right now in a GPS mode. We will talk a little bit about one of the other modes, ADI mode, shortly. There's our screen view. If we go ahead and go up to the left-hand side, we see that there is an arrow to the left. Of course, the far top left, that'll go ahead and take you back to the main screen. We don't really want to do that because then we'll exit the first-person view. We have the fly button, which go ahead and sets you up for your special flight modes. They call it autopilot modes. Orbit, you can go ahead and circle a particular object. Follow, it'll go ahead and follow the controller. And waypoint, you can program up to, I believe it's 99 waypoints, and you can adjust the altitudes and various things like that for your mission. So you can customize it to your mission. Has auto takeoff, which is right underneath the fly button. You'll see most predominant is the leftmost white arrow, but there is a kind of gray arrow to the right showing the landing key. The little house there on the left-hand corner is to return to home. And the little bottom where there's an H, it's kind of interesting. If you click on it, you'll see there that there are two figures there. One of them is an actual drone to the far right, and the other one is a person. The person goes ahead and sets the return to home point as where the controller is, but the drone itself, you can go ahead and reset the home point. Say you take off and maybe you don't want that to be the return to home point. Maybe you're awfully close to a pond or something, and you're thinking, well, maybe that would, leave just a little bit of risk factor if I were to hit return to home. So you go ahead and position it at a different location, and you go ahead and click on that where that drone is, and wherever the drone currently is, when you click on it, it will reset to the drone point. If you don't do anything with this screen, it'll automatically remember the point that you took off with as your return to home point. In the bottom left-hand corner, there's a map. I have it in a hybrid. You can go ahead and adjust it to a more traditional view if you like to have the street layout. Only this one here. Sorry about that. This one here will go ahead and allows you to have the street labels as well as see the satellite view. Come back to the main screen across the top. Once we take off, we'll see that home mark up in the left-hand corner says NA will indicate how far you are from the home. Altitude will be displayed in the middle there at feet, and it'll even give you miles per hour. In the right-hand corner, we will see the amount of minutes left in battery life, which is kind of nice. The percentage of the drone's battery, 98%. And then the rightmost corner talks a little bit about there's a sonar monograph camera on the bottom that allows it to sense when it's really close to the ground, and it's not really sensing anything now. It's not in flight, not turned on. So over in the right hand corner, you'll also see a little camera with a 0 degrees setting on it. That is your gimbal pitch. You can go ahead and adjust the pitch like I am now with the leftmost wheel on the controller all the way down to 90 degrees, looking straight at the ground. Underneath that, there is a video camera picture, you can click on that or click on one of the buttons on the actual receiver. And at the bottom of that is a camera. You can go ahead and push that button and it'll take the picture. Again, there is a button that I usually use on the controller. It's a little bit more convenient for me when I'm flying. There's different settings. We're not going to go ahead and get into all the picture settings. You can adjust the ISO, the shutter, the EV. You can also set it up for just basically automatic exposure, which is what I have this set on right now. I went ahead and I clicked on the camera with the wrench down below, and that's your camera settings. You can adjust those as well, the various settings. So let's go ahead, and just lastly before we fly, in the right hand corner you'll see that it's currently attached to 16 satellites. Their drone uses both American and Russian satellites, so it has GLONASS. In the left hand other corner there, on the left of the green block that says safe to fly, there's some other settings that I like to check before I fly. In the left hand top corner you'll see the drone setting. That's the most important one for me. I go ahead and I maximize certain things. I do a fair amount of teaching with this drone, so this allows me to put a little bit of training wheels on it per se. You can set the maximum speeds to 11, 22, or 33 miles an hour. The altitude, you can either leave no maximum there, and it'll go up to, the manufacturer says somewhere around 3,200 feet, I believe, although if you're going to set it here, a limit, the highest they'll let you set it to is 2,600 feet. You can turn a distance limit on, so if you have someone new flying your drone or you yourself are new, it will allow it not to get too far away. An important feature of this drone is the go home altitude, so it'll automatically make sure that whatever you set it to, it climbs to that altitude, maximum 200 feet, before it returns back to you. So I like to go ahead and give those settings a glance before I take off. So let's go ahead and fire it up and do some flying. We're in GPS mode, so it does say safe to fly. When we switch to ADI mode in a short while, you'll see it'll say caution, and it'll turn orange to the bottom just to let you know. So we're going to go ahead and take off. And we're just going to go forward a little bit on the controller, bring in a little bit of altitude there, somewhere around 100, and looks like we're leveling off about 137 feet. We're just going to go forward a little bit. That's the camera at the 0-degree pitch. Do maybe a figure 8 or 2 as we're turning the controller around. Also shows the gimbal stability. It does move around a lot. Obviously during a figure 8, there's a lot of maneuvering going on in the sky. I'll show you some stable shots here shortly. So as we're just going forward now, sky, no really special maneuvers. You'll see that the airspeed is fluctuating. So right now it's at about 10.1 miles an hour. It's about 360 feet and going further away from me. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back this way. Again, the manufacturer says it can go about 1.2 miles, but certainly I don't take it beyond line of sight myself. I like to keep it in view at all times. There's some maneuvers. I can go ahead and on the right hand side stop the drone for a minute, let it just hover, so you can notice even more. I can adjust the settings on the EV, the amount of darkness or light. I do have a ND filter on this camera right now to block out a little bit of the light. It's a little bit darker, makes it a little easier to see, so we'll leave it there. You can see it's a pretty smooth picture. Go ahead and bring the camera angle down a little bit so you can see the transition. Alright, let's go ahead. And that's in GPS mode. Stop for a moment. And we're going to put it in ADI mode. ADI is basically a non-GPS mode. Return to home does function in the background as long as you do have satellites running, but it goes ahead and removes some of the limitations of GPS. So you'll see that I'll be able to get this thing up to well over 20 miles an hour. Some people reported getting it to as high as 40, and I think I may have heard even 50 miles an hour. That's pretty fast, going pretty far away probably, but I'm going to go ahead and switch it to ADI mode now.
Attitude mode activated.
And the drone does speak to you. we'll go ahead and you'll see that it's drifting on its own a little bit. You don't really see that much in the camera because the gimbal keeps it stable, but now we'll go ahead and do some turns in attitude mode. So you'll see we're up to over 30 miles an hour right now. Pretty smooth flyer overall. They have recently done some updates to the firmware. There were some pretty wild yaw rates before the upgrade. The update seems to have fixed a lot of that yaw. It was pretty hard to use it at all for any sort of photography with the yaw rate until the firmware came out recently. On average, I get probably about 20-25 minutes of battery life on this drone when I'm flying it. It does depend on things like the winds. We know that if there's a strong wind, then it will go ahead and decrease your battery life substantially. You'll see on the bottom of the screen it says be cautious to fly. That's because I'm now in ADI mode. I'll go ahead and switch it from ADI mode to one of the other modes. IOC mode. ILC, and you'll see there's a screen prompt just to remind you there's another mode. Some people like to use this for photography, basically.
Maximum
no matter what way it's facing,
altitude
right will always be right, and left will always be left. It gets rid of the regular drone necessity of knowing where the nose is. So some people, when they're doing photography, like to do this because they just keep turning to the general direction. They don't have to think about the direction of the nose. I myself have gotten pretty used to flying it as a regular drone, so I don't put it in ILC any very often. You can see there's quite a bit of stability. It's a GPS mode. I'm going to go ahead and go back to GPS mode. We're going to show you a couple more of the other functions. Let's go ahead and go to the fly mode. I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate a brief waypoint mission. So you'll go ahead and click on the waypoint. You'll go to create. You can go ahead and pre-program missions as well when you're on the ground and upload it when you're in the air, which is a nice feature.
Maximum altitude
You can pick the waypoint
reached.
based on aircraft pointing on the map or drawing a line on the map. I'm just going to point on the map.
Maximum
I'm going to do a very
altitude
short
reached.
waypoint mission because I've set that altitude to 200 feet every so often. Maximum of 200 feet. You'll see that it does remind you quite often of it. We'll just make a couple quick waypoints here. I'm just going to do those two and we'll hit next. When it's done, I'm going to put it on hover. I can have it go home, but I'm going to bring it pretty close to me anyway, so I don't really need it to do that. When you click on each waypoint, it automatically sets 197 feet as the waypoint altitude. You can adjust it. You can bring it higher or lower if you want. You can determine how long it's going to hover. I have it on 0 seconds. So there's a few settings you can do here.
Starting waypoint
I'm
mission.
going to go ahead and start the waypoint mission. It's uploading the waypoints now.
Starting waypoint mission.
You can see on the screen where it's going. We'll go ahead and bring it to here. One of the advantages of waypoint missions is it allows you to be able to manipulate the camera. So I'm going to tilt it down just a little bit, and you can still kind of see where it's going in the left-hand corner there, probably about the 7 o'clock position. So you can see that it's doing your waypoints. It's making its turn now for the second waypoint. You can see it coming back to me. That building behind me is a big facilities building. I'm actually flying at one of
Waypoint
the
mode
fields at the
terminated.
college near my house. And it's just about done.
Waypoint mode terminated.
So I'll let you know when it's over. We can go ahead, and I'm not going to demonstrate follow me mode today, but I will go ahead and show you briefly a orbit. So point of interest, you can go ahead and you can set it to U, which is where the controller's at, to where the aircraft's currently at, or you can set a new point of interest, which is what I'm going to go ahead and do. So I'm going to go ahead and pick just a center point. I there is the waypoint. I'm going to hit OK. Now the thing with the waypoint is it's going to go at the current altitude it's at, so you don't select an altitude, so you do have to be careful. You can make the radius anywhere from 33 feet wide to 328 feet, and you adjust that with the stick as well. You can decide, oh, I want to push it in a little bit or pull it back out. You can set the amount of orbits you want it to go in. I myself am just going to do one lap just for the purposes of our video. I'm going to leave it in a clockwise direction, although if you decide you want to go to counterclockwise, you just keep pushing the stick to the left, and eventually it will slow down the rotation rate clockwise, and eventually, or counterclockwise in this case, and eventually go to a clockwise rotation. Well, I'm sorry, we're going clockwise, going to go to a counterclockwise. And I'm going to again leave it at hover. You can set it to return to home. Let's go ahead and hit OK, and we'll start the mission.
Starting orbit mission.
And it's now entering the orbit. I'm going to keep the camera pointed down so you can kind of get a better picture of what way it is beginning the orbit. We can go ahead and by pulling to the right stick backwards, it decreases the radius, makes it a tighter circle, and by using the right controller stick going forward, it widens the circle. As you can see, the numbers moving in the right hand corner.
Orbit mode terminated.
Lightened up the EV a little bit as it's starting to get a little bit darker.
Orbit mode terminated.
Sunset, and it lets you know when it's done with the orbit. Lastly, we'll demonstrate today there is, of course, a return to home feature. Like any other return to home feature, all you got to do is push the button. It's going to return to home if it's within approximately, I believe it's 30 feet of the takeoff location. Then it's just going to do a landing right where it's at. So you can see the battery life is now at 8 minutes. Generally, I try to pick about a 6-minute time frame to land. You can see the percentage is still 43%, so that's a good percentage. You can go into a battery settings and you can adjust the time when you want it to have a return to home warning on the battery, basically a low battery warning. You can't go below 25% though, so at least at 25%, based on the distance it is from the controller, it'll return to home. At 10%, it will go into a critical landing, which means that wherever it's at, it's going to go ahead and land. I'm going to go ahead and bring it in for a landing, and that will conclude our video for today. Pretty smooth aircraft, pretty easy to land. They do have an auto takeoff and land feature, which we didn't really utilize today. It will take off and hold it to an altitude of approximately 3 feet above the ground, and it'll hover until you're ready for it. I like to do precision landings with the aircraft versus just putting it on the ground, so a lot of times I'll pick a place where there's a spot and I'll land it specifically in that area, close as I can get to it.
Video signal interference.
I also like to bring the camera setting back to a 0 degrees, just get it facing
Video
out, not
signal
down,
interference.
just to make sure we don't scratch up the lens or anything. Alright, it's a very smooth fly aircraft. And there we go. She's on the ground. And that's going to conclude our video for today. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.